Nobody knew the quiet veteran, until a general arrived and called her the best soldier he'd seen. The sun had not fully risen over the town of Millbrook when Maria Delgado unlocked the side gate of Whitfield Logistics and stepped onto the loading dock. The air smelled of diesel and cardboard, and the metal shutters groaned as they lifted, one after another, letting in the pale morning light. She liked being the first one there. It gave her a few quiet minutes before the noise of the day began, before the forklifts rattled and the radios crackled with voices calling out shipment numbers. For 6 years, this had been her routine. She arrived early, checked the schedules, organized the pallets, and worked without complaint through 8, sometimes 10 hours a day. She rarely spoke unless spoken to, and even then, her answers were short and polite. She never joined the lunchroom conversations about weekend plans or family gossip. She simply ate her sandwich alone at the end of the break table, nodded if someone greeted her, and returned to work exactly on time. The other employees had their own theories about her. Some thought she was shy. Others thought she was cold, maybe even unfriendly. A young worker named Tommy once joked to his friend that Maria moved like a soldier, all straight lines and sharp corners, like someone marching instead of walking. He did not know how close he was to the truth. Maria never talked about her past. She never mentioned the 10 years she had spent in the army, the deployments overseas, or the medals folded away in a drawer at home, wrapped in cloth and never displayed. She did not talk about the sound of gunfire that still visited her dreams sometimes, or the friends she had lost, or the ones she had carried out of danger with her own hands. That part of her life felt like it belonged to someone else, a woman who no longer existed in the quiet town of Millbrook. Here, she was just Maria from the loading dock, quiet and efficient, easy to overlook. She liked it that way. After leaving the service, she had wanted nothing more than an ordinary life. Her mother had grown sick during her final year of duty, and Maria had made a decision that surprised even her commanding officers. She turned down a promotion that would have kept her in for another decade, and instead she came home. She spent 2 years caring for her mother, feeding her, reading to her, holding her hand through the hardest nights, until her mother passed peacefully in her sleep. After that, Maria needed work, and Whitfield Logistics was hiring. She took the job without mentioning her service. Nobody asked, and she never offered. The warehouse manager, a heavy-set man named Frank Doyle, appreciated her because she never called in sick, never argued about her shifts, and always finished her tasks early. He did not know much more about her than that, and he had never felt the need to ask. She was reliable, and in his line of work, reliability was worth more than friendliness. That Tuesday morning began like any other. The trucks rolled in around 7, and the crew began unloading crates of machine parts bound for 3 different cities. Maria moved between them, checking labels, guiding forklifts, keeping everything organized the way she always did. By 9 o'clock, the dock was full of noise and motion, the ordinary music of a working morning. Then, without warning, everything stopped. A black government vehicle rolled into the parking lot, followed by a second car. Both moved slowly, deliberately, the kind of arrival that made people notice. Workers paused mid-task, glancing toward the gate. Doors opened, and out stepped several men in dark suits, followed by a tall man in a formal military uniform, his chest lined with ribbons and medals that caught the weak morning light. Frank Doyle came hurrying out of his office, wiping his hands on his shirt, clearly confused and a little nervous. "Can I help you?" he asked, glancing between the visitors. The man in uniform did not answer him. Instead, his eyes moved across the warehouse floor, searching, until they landed on a woman standing near a stack of pallets, a clipboard in her hand, her posture suddenly straighter than a moment before. "Sergeant First Class Delgado," the general said, his voice carrying clearly across the now silent dock. "It has been a long time." The clipboard slipped slightly in Maria's grip. For a moment, she looked like she had seen a ghost. Then something in her posture shifted, an old instinct rising to the surface, and she straightened her shoulders and offered a crisp salute before she could stop herself. The workers around her exchanged confused glances. Tommy, standing near a stack of boxes, mouthed the word "Sergeant" to his friend, utterly bewildered. The general returned her salute, then walked closer, his expression warm despite the formality of his uniform. "At ease," he said gently. "You do not have to salute me here, Maria. Not anymore." She lowered her hand slowly, still trying to understand what was happening. "General Whitmore," she said quietly. "What are you doing here, sir?" "I came to find you," he said. "It took my office longer than I would like to admit. You are a hard woman to track down when you do not want to be found." A small, nervous laugh escaped her. "I did not think anyone was looking, sir." "Someone was always looking," he said. "I simply took too long to start." By now, every worker on the floor had gathered nearby, forklifts idling, boxes forgotten. Frank Doyle stood frozen beside his office door, unsure whether to interrupt or stay silent. The general noticed the growing crowd and turned to face them, his voice steady and clear enough for everyone to hear. "I imagine most of you know this woman as a quiet co-worker," he said. "Someone who shows up early, does her job, and does not say much. I am here today because I think it is time you knew who she really is." Maria opened her mouth to protest, but the general continued before she could speak. 10 years ago, during a mission overseas, our unit came under heavy fire while investigating reports of enemy activity near a collapsed structure," he said. "The building had been unstable for days, damaged by earlier shelling, and it began to give way while 3 of our soldiers were still trapped inside. Sergeant Delgado was not assigned to that structure. She had no orders to go in, but she went anyway." He paused, letting his words settle over the crowd. Tommy stood completely still, his mouth slightly open. Even Frank Doyle had stepped closer, arms folded, listening intently. "She pulled the first soldier out through a collapsing doorway, carried him nearly 40 yards to safety, then went back in without hesitation," the general continued. "She pulled out the second soldier the same way, through smoke and falling debris, while enemy fire continued around her. When she went back for the third time, the building was already crumbling. Command ordered her to retreat. She refused. The warehouse was utterly silent now, except for the distant hum of a refrigeration unit somewhere in the building. She went back in one more time," the general said, his voice softer now, heavier with memory. "She found the third soldier pinned beneath a fallen beam, unable to move. She lifted that beam herself, pulled him free, and carried him out, just before the structure came down completely. All 3 of those soldiers are alive today because of her. One of them has 2 children now, another became a teacher, the third works for my staff in Washington." He looked at Maria, whose eyes had grown glassy, though she fought to keep her composure. "She received a medal for that day," he continued. "She barely mentioned it to anyone. When I offered her a promotion the following year, one that would have placed her in a command position with a distinguished career ahead of her, she turned it down. She told me her mother was sick and needed her more than the army did. She left the service quietly, without asking for recognition, without expecting anyone to remember her name." He turned back to the crowd, his gaze steady. "In 30 years of service, I have worked alongside thousands of soldiers. Officers, enlisted personnel, decorated heroes, and quiet ones nobody ever noticed. I can tell you honestly, without exaggeration, that Maria Delgado is the finest soldier I have ever had the honor of serving with." Tommy looked at Maria, as though seeing her for the very first time, his earlier joke about her marching like a soldier suddenly taking on a completely different meaning. Maria, uncomfortable beneath the weight of so many eyes, finally spoke, her voice quiet but steady. "I just did what needed to be done, sir." "Anyone would have done the same." The general shook his head slowly. "No, Maria, not anyone. That is exactly why I am here today." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small case, opening it to reveal a medal Maria had never seen before, its ribbon a deep shade of blue. "This is a Distinguished Service Commendation," he said. "It was approved months ago, but I insisted on delivering it myself. You deserved better than a letter in the mail." Maria's hands trembled slightly as she accepted the case, staring down at it as though unsure it was real. For a woman who had faced fire without flinching, this simple act of recognition seemed to move her more deeply than any danger ever had. "Thank you, sir," she whispered. "Thank you," the general replied, for everything you gave, and for everything you never asked for in return." He turned to the gathered workers once more. "I apologize for interrupting your morning," he said, a small smile appearing on his face. "But some things are worth interrupting a schedule for." Slowly, almost hesitantly, the workers began to clap. It started quietly, just a few hands coming together, but it grew steadily until the entire warehouse echoed with applause. Tommy clapped the loudest, grinning from ear to ear, his earlier confusion replaced entirely by admiration. Frank Doyle stepped forward and shook Maria's hand firmly, his voice thick with emotion, as he told her she should have said something sooner. Maria, overwhelmed, simply nodded, unable to find the right words. After years of choosing silence, she had never expected the truth to matter this much to the people around her. But looking at their faces now, she realized they were not looking at her with pity or curiosity. They were looking at her with respect, the kind of respect that comes only from truly understanding someone's sacrifice. The general stayed only a little while longer, exchanging a few private words with Maria before returning to his vehicle. Before he left, he placed a hand on her shoulder and said quietly, "You do not have to hide who you are anymore, Sergeant. Let them see you." As the government cars pulled away and the warehouse slowly returned to its normal rhythm, something had changed. The forklifts started again, the crates continued moving, and the trucks came and went as they always had. But the atmosphere on the dock felt different now, warmer somehow, as though the walls themselves had absorbed a piece of the story they had just witnessed. In the weeks that followed, Maria remained much the same person she had always been. She still arrived early, still worked hard, and still preferred quiet mornings to loud conversations. But something subtle had shifted. Co-workers began greeting her more warmly, asking about her day, inviting her to sit with them during lunch. She accepted more often than she used to, slowly allowing herself to be part of the community she had quietly served alongside for years. Tommy, in particular, became something like a friend, often asking her questions about her time in the service, listening intently to whatever small stories she was willing to share. She never spoke much about the difficult parts, but she found herself smiling more often when she talked about the friends she had made, the strength she had discovered in herself, and the quiet pride she now allowed herself to feel. Frank Doyle eventually placed a small plaque near the entrance of the warehouse, a simple wooden sign thanking veterans for their service, inspired entirely by what he had witnessed that day. Maria never asked for it, but she appreciated it all the same, a quiet acknowledgement that fit perfectly with the life she had built. Late one evening, after most of the workers had gone home, Maria stood alone on the loading dock, watching the sun set over the quiet parking lot. She thought about the years she had spent trying to disappear into an ordinary life, believing that her past belonged in a drawer, hidden away like the medals she never displayed. She realized now that hiding had never made her stronger, it had only made her lonelier. She reached into her pocket and touched the edge of the small case the general had given her, still carrying it with her most days, not out of pride, but out of quiet acceptance. She was still the same woman who valued silence over attention, who preferred hard work over recognition, but she no longer felt the need to hide the truth of who she was. As she locked the gate behind her and walked toward her car, she allowed herself a small, genuine smile. For 6 years, nobody at Whitfield Logistics had known the quiet woman on the loading dock had once been a soldier capable of extraordinary courage. Now, they knew. And though she still preferred quiet mornings and simple routines, she no longer felt like she was hiding from her own story. She was simply living it, one honest day at a time.